With the news of Peter Jackson coming back to Middle-earth, there's been a lot of speculation. We have Andy Serkis directing a Gollum movie, a Smeagol movie, which is really cool. If you guys have seen the fan-made film on YouTube, The Hunt for Gollum, that's essentially what we're going to get. But Peter Jackson is back, and he's involved, not necessarily directing each and every project, but he's been involved in what they're saying are multiple projects set in Middle-earth. And him and his team, Philippa Boyens and Fran Walsh, who worked on the original Lord of the Rings trilogy, have been there since the inception. We talked about this a whole year ago. So now the question is, yes, we're getting the Gollum movie, but what are the other projects that are in development? Peter Jackson's already done the Lord of the Rings and the Hobbit. So a lot of fans are asking the question, is Peter Jackson planning on doing the Silmarillion next? Before we can answer that question, we need to address who holds the rights. What can we do and what can't we do? Because isn't Amazon doing a story on the Second Age with the Rings of Power? So can we do a Silmarillion movie? What are the other books that we can adapt? The Unfinished Tales, The Children of Hurin, what is possible? That's what we're going to talk about today. This article is from Gizmodo.com, a guide to the messy, divided rights to the Lord of the Rings. These are the 4 companies that have some sort of stake in Middle-earth. You have the Tolkien estate, obviously. You have the Embracer Group, the owner of Middle-earth Enterprises, Warner Brothers through New Line Cinema, and Amazon Studios, which you've seen in Rings of Power. So we're going to go through each and every one of them and see where the rights actually lie. So we know what can be adapted and what Peter Jackson, along with Warner Brothers, can do moving into the future. So first off, we've got the Tolkien estate, and I mean, this is pretty obvious, right? They have the publishing rights to The Lord of the Rings, The Hobbit, right? They print the Silmarillion, The Unfinished Tales of Numenor and Middle-earth. So essentially, they've got the books. But I want you to pay attention to this last line right here. The Tolkien estate also retains the licensing rights to the latter works. What latter works? The Silmarillion and works like The Unfinished Tales of Numenor and Middle-earth. It's only the non-publishing rights for Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit that have gone elsewhere. And that leads us on to the next slide. The Embracer Group, who had acquired Middle-earth Enterprises, a subdivision of the Saul Zaentz company, that has owned myriad worldwide adaptive rights to Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit, adaptive rights. So Embracer, through Middle-earth Enterprises, can license these rights across film and certain TV productions for Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit, because Tolkien Enterprises still holds on to the rest. So Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit, if you want to adapt those, you go through the Embracer Group. You go through Middle-earth Enterprises. And that's exactly what Warner Brothers has done. Warner Brothers has done that for film rights. Games Workshop, Free League Publishing, Warner Brothers Interactive, right? So all the games that we've been getting and board games and all that stuff, they're going through Middle-earth Enterprises for that. And remember, that's only for The Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit. Now, here's something we're all familiar with. Warner Brothers, through New Line Cinema, has held the movie rights to Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit since the late 90s, after Peter Jackson's movie plans moved from Miramax to it, as these rights are the ones licensed through Middle-earth Enterprises, what we just saw, okay? Now we come to everybody's favorite, Amazon and the Rings of Power, okay? Amazon owns arguably the smallest slice of the Middle-earth pie. Now remember, Middle-earth Enterprises holds the rights to The Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit. So what Amazon did is they went directly to the Tolkien estate and negotiated for rights for The Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit. And they did so specifically for a TV series adaptation. Now, the issue is, and this is the issue with the Rings of Power, the rights are to The Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit. The Rings of Power isn't a story about The Lord of the Rings or The Hobbit. And if you've noticed, the Tolkien estate is the only one that holds the rights to the Silmarillion and the Unfinished Tales. And we're telling a story in the Second Age. So it doesn't make any sense. And honestly, I mean, here, let's read this. These rights also specifically relate to Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit, giving Rings of Power access to names and events referenced in those works. So characters like Galadriel and Elrond, I don't know, I read that backwards, and more can appear, which means Rings of Power cannot directly adapt events that Tolkien specifically laid out in books like The Silmarillion or The Unfinished Tales of Numenor and Middle-earth. They can't adapt that stuff. They can't adapt it. Instead, it's been forced to create its own version of those events, inferring points and details Tolkien inferred to in Lord of the Rings and its appendices, as well as The Hobbit. So it makes absolutely no sense to me why they're even doing a second age story when they don't even have the rights to the material to do a second age story. They're being forced to make up stuff. They're being forced to fill in the blanks. That's the big issue right there, and it applies directly to WB, Peter Jackson, and all of them as well. They don't own the rights to Silmarillion. WB does not have access to the Silmarillion. So, as the way things stand right now, we're not getting a Silmarillion movie. Peter Jackson is not doing the Silmarillion. Okay? Unless they go, like Amazon did, to the Tolkien estate and try and work out a deal. That's what's going to have to happen. Otherwise, they're only going to be able to play within the confines of The Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit. Or they might have to fill in the blanks like the Rings of Power has done. And I'm pretty sure nobody wants that. So while I would love for Peter Jackson to be able to do a Silmarillion movie, the way things are right now, he can't. He can't do it unless he wants it to end up something like Rings of Power. To everyone who wants a Silmarillion movie, hopefully WB can work things out with the Tolkien estate, get the rights, and we can get a faithful adaptation, just like the Lord of the Rings trilogy of the Silmarillion by Peter Jackson. That would be cool. So let me know your thoughts down below in the comment section. Would you be looking forward to something like that? Or are you a bit wary and you're like, hey, just leave the book alone. I'm tired of these Hollywood adaptations. I'm fine with the book. That's it. Let me know your thoughts down below in the comment section. And I'll see you all in the next video. Take care. Bye-bye.